Yes, Colin?
Yes, speaking.
Yeah. We'll let you in. We'll let you in as a panelist once the meeting starts up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Audio test. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Eli. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning
Good
to you
morning.
too.
Good.
That's a nice background picture.
I got it from Doug Thompson.
Did you ask for his permission to use it?
I did. I did.
Oh.
I paid for the rights.
Good.
Scott, long time Lucy.
Actually saw you in person.
I know it was so weird, Scott. I was like,
It was weird.
first event ever.
Totally forgot what you looked like in person.
I tried to save you last night, but it didn't work out.
Oh, it's fine.
Remember, guys, we are being recorded. Eh?
So Councillor DeRuse and Councillor Moffat, you guys received the two motions, the technical amendments?
I got mine.
Yeah, I have the one on the Ottawa Street file.
Yep.
Yeah.
And mine is technical amendment from the 1420 Old Prescott.
Yes.
Do we have speakers, Mark?
Pardon me?
Do we have speakers? Registered
Not
speakers?
for that item. We do have speakers just basically on number one. We do have applicants for the other two, for item number 2 and item number 3, but if it goes on consent, there's no need to, they don't need to speak.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair.
Good morning. How's everyone?
Good.
Good.
No
Morning,
complaint.
all. I'm here. It's Carol Ann, but it looks like
Oh.
I've got a video problem. Sorry, but I am here.
Actually, when you start speaking, Councillor Meehan, I thought you were Glenn because Glenn popped up in the picture too. So, good morning, Councillor Gower.
Good morning. Working remotely from my parked car.
You're not driving and zooming at the same time?
No, sir, I am not.
Okay. Because I was going to say you're going to be late, but I'm glad you're here. So,
Yeah, you don't want to do a committee meeting from the car driving.
Nice, Scott.
Oh, hey, George.
Hey, with my background, you don't know if I'm in the car or not.
I just assume you're in Osgood Township. This is my assumption.
Yep.
I've got a Rideau Township flag in one of my drawers over there.
I think we all have one just as a souvenir. We kept West Carlton flag as well. So,
What about Tor Bolton flag or a Huntley flag or a Fitzroy flag?
I think they're long gone, those. I think Tor Bolton now they'll be long gone. It was 1973.
1973?
Yeah, that was the amalgamation. So
The torrid amalgamation of 1973 still lives on in the minds of some rural
yes,
residents.
oh yes,
Oh, yeah.
oh yes. We still have Fitzroy, Huntley, Tor Bolton. So
I remember I was campaigning once. I was out in Marlborough Township down Roger Stevens, and I'm at the gentleman's house. An older gentleman lived there for his whole life, and he's going on and on about amalgamation. He's so upset about amalgamation. Then he finishes with, "It was so much better when we were Marlborough Township."
and did you tell him that was before you were even born?
I might have told him it was 8 years before I was born. I might have said that.
All right. So I think we're all here, and I know Councillor Kitts has to departure by noon, so I'm hoping we'll be done by that time, Madam Vice Chair. like to call our meeting to order. Mr. Desjardins, maybe we can have a roll call before we start our meeting.
Councillor Meehan,
Here.
Councillor Moffat,
Here.
Councillor DeRose,
Here.
Councillor Gower,
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts,
Here.
Chair El Shantiri,
Here as well.
all present.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Before we obviously like to call our meeting to order for the Agricultural Affairs Committee, Thursday, October 7, 2021. So first week of October, or from October 4th to 10, has been considered the Ontario Agriculture Week. So with that, I like to, with your indulgence, I'd like to make a few comments. What does it mean to us as Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's meeting of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. I don't know if everyone is aware, but our meeting this month falls right in the middle of Ontario Agriculture Week. Agriculture Week 2021 kicked off on Monday and will run through the weekend just in time for Thanksgiving. I can't think of a better time to celebrate the farmers of Ontario and of Ottawa in particular. I know today's agenda is mostly dedicated to rural zoning applications, but the first word in our committee name is still agriculture. So I'll just take a few moments to recognize the important role agriculture plays in this city. Ottawa's agricultural resources are critical to food security across the region. If you ever driven across east to the west, you'll know our city is massive. But you will realize 82% of that geographic and rural area, it is easy to see the impact that the size has in our local food supply. A lot of people don't know this, but Ottawa is the largest rural community in Canada. It is one of Ottawa's most distinct features and makes us unique among other major Canadian cities. It also makes our rural area critically important to the city's economic well-being. Rural Ottawa has more than 2,000 businesses, and while they are obviously not all agricultural, and a huge portion of them are. And beyond that, another large number of those businesses rely on those agricultural routes. People outside Ottawa have the impression our economy is dominated by government or by high-tech industry. But the fact is, by size alone, the agriculture sector is massive driver in our city's economy. The rural economy contributes more than $1 billion to Ottawa's gross domestic product, and is a big portion of that generated by the agricultural activity. Clearly, agriculture as a pivotal to Ottawa's overall economic prosperity, growth, and diversity. So, as Agriculture Week draws to close, I hope you take some time to reflect on the important role that farmers play in our lives. And if you are enjoying a meal with loved ones this weekend, I also hope you find a way to represent a local farmers on your Thanksgiving table. Nothing tastes better than local grown product, and nothing is critical to our health and well-being than the healthy food they provided. So thank you for your indulgence, but remember our farmers in your prayer this weekend on Thanksgiving. With that, we'll start our meeting. There's a chair statement, the public hearing for OP and zoning item. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 1 to 4 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submission today or written submission before the amendment are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of recipient of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comment on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on October 13, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. With that, we can start our meeting. Declaration of interest. See none. Before we start, obviously, this meeting is still broadcast through Zoom. I think we all know the rules of participation in a Zoom meeting. Confirmation of minute 25th meeting of 2nd September 2021 of Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Is the minutes clear?
Carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 1, we have a speaker. We might also have a small presentation from our staff. So we'll hold item number 1. Item number 2 is the zoning bylaw amendment 6420 and 6431 Ottawa Street. And the item is, we have no speaker. We did receive we didn't receive correspondence this one. Right, Mark? We have, that's on the other item. This item number 2, zoning amendment, we just have technical amendment from Councilor Moffitt.
Right, we have the technical amendment and we do have the one delegation, Jamie Posen from FOTEN, but doesn't need to speak unless, if it doesn't go on consent.
Okay, so let's hear first from our colleague with the technical amendment, Councilor Moffitt.
Thank you. So it was just discovered that there was a bit of an error in the map attached to the report. So the motion simply says that whereas report ACS 2021 PIEPS 0112 recommends approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for 6420 and 6431 Ottawa Street, and whereas inconsistencies between document 1 location map and document 2 details of recommended zoning have been identified, specifically relating to the holding symbol and exception numbers, therefore be it resolved that the map on page 11 of the report be replaced with the map attached hereto. Be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act subsection 3417, no further notice be given. And there is a map as well. That was an additional attachment that you should have received. There it is there. I'm sure it all makes sense to you, all the map of all the different spots and zonings. And Area D is going to be a big park and school, so that's kind of cool.
Okay, and on the technical amendment,
Carried.
Carrie, on the report,
Carried.
Carried.
obviously, Mr. Posen, you don't need to speak. You'll be happy we carried this item. Thank you very much
Very
for
happy.
coming today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item number 3 is a zoning bylaw amendment, 1240 Old Prescott Road in Osgood. Also, we have a technical amendment. Councilor DeRoos on a technical amendment.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there is a little mistake and staff send me a motion so we can, where is the report? ACS 2020 PIEPS 0113 details the zoning bylaw amendment for 1240 Old Prescott Road. There is a typographical error in document 2 of the report for the zoning bylaw amendment for 1240 Old Prescott. Whereas the details of the zoning exception should be referring to a maximum lot coverage of 25%. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council replace the word minimum in document 2 with maximum. Be it further resolved that the pursuant to the Planning Act subsection 3417, no further notice has been given. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor DeRoos. On the amendment,
Carried.
Carried.
so we do have, we received 2 co-responded, and I believe the planner, Ms. McWilliams, will be responding to the 2 residents who sent us the respondent. Also, we have We have the applicant represent in the meeting but he doesn't need to speak if we carry this item. So I see, hello, Mr. Nasrallah. I know you're representing the applicant in this on this file. So we have no further speaker, and like I said, the staff will be responded to the two correspondence we received from the resident. So can we carry item 3?
Carried.
Carry as amended, and thank you, Ms. Nasrallah, for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 4, comprehensive zoning bylaw 2008-250 anomaly report affecting land zone rural commercial subzone 11 RC 11, and the item that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve technical amendment to the table 2018 C-RC 11 subzone provisions of zoning bylaw as detailed in document 2. We have no speaker, no correspondent on this item. Can we carry item number 4?
Carried.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, colleague. Item number 5, and that's rural residential land survey, July 2018 to June 30, 2020 update. And again, this is just to receive that Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee received this report for information. We have no speaker and no correspondent to item 5. Is item 5 received?
Received.
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 Councillor Moffat wants to speak.
Just a really brief question, if I
Okay.
may.
Go ahead.
The map attached, the map on country lot subdivisions applications, registered, draft approved, and pending. Can I just ask if that map includes all of the applications that were kind of rushed in 2009 with the pending moratorium that was put in place at that point?
Who's going to answer that? Eva? Eva, are you?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Yes, this map should include all those applications included after 2009.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eva. Any other question? So we receive item number 5. Is it received?
Received.
Received. Thank you. Item number 6, and that's a commemorative naming proposal, Bird Dowler Park, and that's in Osgood Ward, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve the proposed to name unnamed parkland located at 100 High Garden Terrace, Bird Dowler Park. And I believe Mr. Chanier is here, and that have any question about this item. So, any question? Can we carry this item? Okay.
Carried.
Thank you. Okay, so we have now in camera item. We'll go to item number 1, and I believe I'm not sure who's going to do the presentation, but we do have a small presentation on item number 1 before. I think Tracy, the applicant planners showed on the screen, but we have to go to our presentation first. Anissa, are you going to do the presentation, or Mr. Brown? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm prepared to do the presentation.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you. So good morning. I'm Anissa McAlpine. I'm a planner with the City of Ottawa. The city received this zoning bylaw amendment application in April of 2019. Next slide. The subject site is a portion of the property known as 7731 Fernbank Road. It's located on the north side of Fernbank and west of Jenkinson Side Road. The subject property as a whole is approximately 73 hectares in size, but the area under consideration for the zoning bylaw amendment is only a portion of that. It's about 55 hectares in size. And the area that we're talking about today is set 300 meters back from Fernbank Road. Next slide. Thanks. And this is a map of the rural truck routes. I want to talk about this later if we can come back to it. So we'll just go to the next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so the applicant has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to allow for a pit. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the property from the existing zone, which is rural countryside, RU, to mineral extraction subzone 2, that's ME2. Now, subzone 2 permits use of the site as a pit only and not as a quarry. So the difference is important, and the difference is that the application would propose to extract unconsolidated material like sand and gravel, but not bedrock. Blasting of bedrock would not be required at this site. At staff's request, the applicant have indicated their concurrence for the further inclusion of a special provision in the zoning, which would explicitly prohibit the establishment of concrete or asphalt batching plants on site. And I want to note that the application has been submitted with a concurrently filed license application to the province under the Aggregate Resources Act to extract material. The application to the province pertains to the same area, so it would exclude that 300-meter piece of land closest to Fernbank Road. In order for the province to issue this license, the appropriate municipal zoning must be in place. And I will say that I have correspondence on file from the ministry indicating that they have no objection to the application. Therefore, I understand that they're waiting on the municipal rezoning in order to issue the license, and the applicant, I think, would be better able to speak to their status within the provincial licensing process. Further, I should state that the city does not have site plan control over aggregate extraction sites. Review of site plans and operational plans is complete. The Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, formerly known as MNRF, and they are responsible for the ongoing enforcement of those plans. So on the next slide, we can talk about where the site fits within the official plan. The site is designated general rural area on Schedule A. The site is not designated as a sand and gravel resource area. However, our official plan is quite clear that there's no implied restriction to applications for mineral aggregate operations outside of the areas that are defined and previously designated as sand and gravel resource areas. And that's section 3741 of the official plan. So a sand and gravel pit is a permitted use in the general rural area subject to a zoning bylaw amendment, and an official plan amendment is not required. Next slide. In considering a zoning bylaw amendment for a new mineral extraction site in the general rural area, staff considered relevant policies in section 372 and 374 of the official plan. So those key considerations are that it's pardon my cat, that it's in keeping with the rural character, it's compatible, that we consider impacts to natural heritage, as well as consider traffic impacts. I'll reiterate that the proposed is a sand and gravel pit. Pits are generally smaller scale and shorter term operations than bedrock quarries. They do not involve drilling, blasting, or rock crushing, and therefore pits may not need to be as widely separated from sensitive users than quarries might be. Based on the information that the applicant has submitted to accompany their license application, we know that this is supposed to be a pit above the water table, and our official plan indicates that the area we should be considering for pits above the water table is 150 meters. That's the area of influence. I'll note that there are no residences within 150 meters of the site. The site, as I've said, is proposed to be set back more than 300 meters from Fernbank Road, which would result in a setback to the nearest dwelling on the Lucas Lane residential subdivision of more than 325 meters. The proposed would leave the rural countryside zone on that 300-meter buffer area between Fernbank Road and the license boundary. And that area is expected to be to remain vegetated, and there would additionally be berms parallel to Fernbank Road, but set back 300 meters. And I would not anticipate that there would be any visual change seen from Fernbank Road. Staff want to assure the public and members of the committee that if at a future date the owner wanted to expand their site in any direction or go from being a pit to a quarry, that a further zoning bylaw amendment would be required from the city, as would an amendment to the Aggregate Resources Act license through the province. So with any extraction operation, I understand that there is concern for noise and dust. The province is the lead agency for regulating these items. With aggregate extraction licenses, the province is responsible for ensuring that those matters are enforced within provincial limits. So the applicant is required to mitigate dust on site, and due to the proposed setbacks to sensitive receptors, staff feel that these matters can be appropriately mitigated through the measures required by the province. In terms of natural heritage, the application was supported by an environmental impact statement that indicates that there will be no significant impacts to natural heritage features. The report and site plans have been reviewed by staff, and the province is also reviewing for natural heritage impacts as well as species at risk impacts. In terms of traffic, if I can ask that we go back to slide 3, I believe it was, with the map of truck routes. The application was supported by a transportation brief, and it was updated in 2019 with 2019 numbers, I believe. And it discussed the exit and entry point of the operation onto Fernbank Road. And it looked at traffic volumes on Fernbank Road, determining that the access point will function satisfactorily, and the proposed traffic volumes are within those expected for the road. The application proposes 2 haul routes, being on Fernbank East towards Jenkinson, or Fernbank West to Briar Hill Road. Munster Road will not be used. Fernbank Road is a truck route. It's shown in blue on the map before you, and it's in blue because it's a restricted load route, which means that during the spring thaw period only, so for several weeks, there is a restriction on loads. Otherwise, it is a truck route. It's been built to a standard to carry significant truck traffic. Staff see it as highly beneficial that the site is on a truck route and in very close proximity to Highway 7. So there's no need for trucks to travel through any communities on their way to or from the site. In terms of road noise, we don't measure road noise on any roads. Nevertheless, an acoustical report was submitted with the application, and the noise consultant assessed noise levels under existing traffic conditions and repeated the assessment addressing the forecast of heavy vehicles on the route. And it was deemed a reasonable approach to assessing the difference in noise levels and was satisfactory to staff. Staff are aware that the site will generate an increase in road noise. However, I point out again that this is a truck route and it is designed to carry truck traffic. And so we can move along to the last slide. In conclusion, thank you. So in conclusion, the staff are recommending approval of the site, of the zoning bylaw amendment. It offers an opportunity to extract necessary sand and gravel resources with limited impact on agricultural resources, natural heritage systems, and surrounding residences. The proposed operation is required to stay above the water table, thus limiting impacts on groundwater quality. Staff are recommending approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application. The site is proposed to operate as a pit only. It is significantly set back from adjacent residences, and the zoning will include prohibitions on noxious uses like asphalts and cement batching plants. So the proposed is in keeping with the policies of the general rural area. The application is also consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement in that it allows for aggregate resources to be available close to market while undertaking extraction in a manner which minimizes social, economic, and environmental impacts. Thanks, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Anissa. I see Councillor Meehan had her hand up, but Councillor, we have 3 delegations on this file. Perhaps we can ask staff after the delegation, unless you have something right now, if you need
No,
a clarification. Okay.
I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll start so we have three speakers. We'll start with Pauline Hurd, President of the Northwest Woburn Community Association. Colin, you're with us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Colin, go ahead, please.
Good. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to everyone attending the ARAC meeting this morning. As you know, my name is Colin Hurd, and I am the current president of the Northwest Woburn Community Association, or NWGCA, representing the many homes and businesses that characterize this diverse area. It is a well-established subdivision of mostly log homes, also known as heritage corners. Some of us have been residents here for close to 40 years. I'm aware that copies of a letter and a detailed report that we submitted to the coordinator have been distributed to the committee members, councillors, and other staff probably. I've requested this opportunity to speak today to state that as a long-standing community, we are adamantly opposed to the rezoning of the subject property. In 1996, the province requested the then Regional Municipality of Ottawa-Carleton, RMOC, to rezone all the privately owned lands from Jenkinson Road to Dwyer Hill Road, from general rural to mineral reserve. This would have sterilized these properties and made them worthless to the owners. After 4 years of investigation, the RMOC made a well-informed and correct decision to deny the rezoning. Nothing has changed since then. There is still a large dairy operation adjacent to this land in question now, 2 major equestrian centers, a golf course, and more residences. I would be interested to know if any of the ARAC members, city staff, or anyone else involved in the proposed rezoning has visited the subject property and area in the recent past. If so, you would know that our rural community is already surrounded by no less than 4 quarries, all of which are less than 3 kilometers from our properties. We are subject to regular blasting, constant truck and heavy equipment traffic along Fernbank Road and Munster Road, and noise and dust from quarry operations. The subject property is located northwest of our community, where prevailing winds will exacerbate these conditions of if rezoning were to be approved. The physical, the physical and mental health of residents would also be affected, and maintenance of our properties will increase, with log homes being particularly impacted by dust from all quarry operations and heavy road traffic. An important point in this whole matter at the moment is that we are astonished that the lead planner on this matter did not know that several months ago, the city changed the traffic flow on Fernbank Road by disallowing truck traffic to go east towards Stittsville on Fernbank. As a result, the truck traffic on Fernbank going west and on Munster Road going south has increased dramatically. This totally invalidates the previous noise and traffic studies done by the proponent. With an increased truck traffic and the proposed entrance, exit to the location of the subject property, and that's actually opposite, actually it's at the intersection of Fernbank and Munster, basically. There is an extremely dangerous traffic situation with very large loaded trucks turning off Jenkinson Road onto Fernbank and just picking up speed as they approach that Munster Road intersection. And traffic already converges on that intersection from 3 directions. Since 100 years of aggregate and supply has already been identified and protected by the city through existing zoning, and the subject property was not identified in any of the aggregate resource reviews as being required to meet city supply needs, due diligence should have been done before the proponent for this rezoning purchased the property. If that had been the case, no reasonable aggregate operator would have purchased the property. To rezone this land for a very marginal resource using incomplete and suspect information would bring the city's decision-making process in these matters into sharp focus. It will be the precedent that sets the stage for an increasing litigious and expensive zoning process. Therefore, with the dedicated support from our councillor, Scott Moffat, as president of the Northwest Goulburn Community Association, I come before you today representing a strong and united community to request that you make the only responsible decision for Ottawa's future. Reaffirm the correct decision made by RMOC and deny this rezoning. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Any question for Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Councillor Meehan, I see you still have your hand up for the delegate or for the staff after.
I'd like to ask the delegate a question, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Hurd, are the homes in the area, how are you serviced? Are you on well and septic, or are you on city utilities?
Sorry, what was that?
Are most of the homes in this area on well and septic?
Yes, well and septic, yes.
Okay, thank you. And what is your understanding of what has changed from the zoning that was approved by the RMOC and the grounds for this rezoning right now? What's your understanding of why this might be considered now? Any new information that you've been told that would make this eligible for rezoning?
No.
Okay. Okay, and I just want to understand, the traffic now on Fernbank is not, the truck traffic is not permitted to go, I think I wrote that, to go east?
That's right. It's not permitted to go east towards Stittsville any longer.
Okay. Is there would there be a turning lane off Fernbank into this site? Or would
The plan is for an entrance and exit to the site right at where Fernbank and Munster Road connect at the present time.
Like a turning lane? Was there a turning lane included?
There is no room for a turning lane. No. It's very tight turning for those 22-wheel trucks that are leaving the quarries on Jenkinson Road, turning onto Munster or speeding down Fernbank toward Dwyer Hill. That makes that an extremely dangerous intersection to put in another entrance exit to a pit.
Yeah, that's my concern. The traffic study was done in 2019. A lot has changed out in that area since.
It has.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Any other question to the delegate? If it's not, thank you very much, Mr. Hurd, for your presentation. Our second speaker is Stephanie Bratton. Stephanie, I see you're on the screen. You might go ahead, ma'am. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Stephanie. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 young boys, and a resident of Heritage Corners. Our move to Lucas Lane last year was not just a change in postal code. It was our family moving to our dream home and providing the life we'd always wanted for our children. We wrote a letter to the previous owners, letting them know how much this move meant to us and our commitment to carrying on the legacy of living on the street, which many of these residents have cared for since the early 80s. This is a promise we intend to keep. As is always the case, over time, our street has seen some of its founding families move on and younger families with children move in again. This street is very much alive and active and you can often find these families walking together, some with their dogs, doing the loop from Lucas Lane to Fernbank, down Munster and back. Unfortunately, some street members will not do this walk because it's already quite dangerous, even with the gravel shoulder. Safety, of course, is our top priority, and the potential of many more trucks barreling down Fernbank and Munster would be a reckless decision for the city to approve. In addition to that, dust settlement and air quality is already a significant issue we deal with. Having an additional gravel pit, especially such a short distance away, would increase this problem substantially. I understand that what you're looking for is more focused on numbers and figures, but I implore you to put yourself in the shoes of the families that would be impacted by this proposed gravel pit and truly give thought to the health and safety implications it would pose. Consider it as if it were your own families and your own health here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Any question for the delegate? There's no question. Thank you very much, ma'am, for making your presentation. And we move on to the applicant agent, Tracy Zander from Zander Planning. Tracy, you know the rules. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Tracy Zander. My company is called Zander Plan. I'm the professional planning consultant. I've been working with the property owner for several years on this project. Some of you may recall there was a previous application for a pit and quarry license on this application. Before I got involved, that application was withdrawn. And as you've heard from your staff, what you have before you today is just the application for a pit above the water table. Next slide, please. I'll do my best not to duplicate what your planner has clearly covered. This is an excerpt from the city's Geo-Ottawa zoning map with the subject property kind of outlined in the center of the screen. You can see the subdivision that the residents have spoken to the southeast, and a number of pit and quarry license applications surrounding that. And this property is bounded on the, call it the north side, by the Trans-Canada Trail. Next slide, please. So the application that you have before you is the zoning amendment. There are two applications happening in parallel, the zoning amendment under the Planning Act and the aggregate pit application under the Aggregate Resources Act. So I'll just briefly speak to both of those. This is the process we followed for the zoning. The application was filed in the spring of 2019, concurrent with the application we filed to the ministry for the pit license under the ARA. We provided some additional information to staff, and eventually this application was deemed complete in January of 2020. So we are 18, 20 months since this application was deemed complete by the city. And so we're moving towards a decision. There were several rounds of review comments from your staff, and got a bit mired in COVID, of course, but here we are, provided additional information this summer, and this is the statutory public meeting for the zoning. Next slide, please. So under the Aggregate Resources Act, we filed the application to the ministry at the same time with the zoning. There's a 45-day public process required under the Aggregate Resources Act. We had a statutory open house at the Goulburn Township Hall in the spring of 2019. Since that time, we have worked to address various agency and ministry comments, so Conservation Authority, Algonquins of Ontario, several ministries, as well as some neighbor comments. To date, all of the agency and ministry comments have been addressed. The Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Northern Development and Mines, I apologize, whatever their title is today, all of the ministry and agency comments have been resolved, and they have issued clearance letters saying they are fully satisfied. The outstanding objector from the ARA process, as you heard, was the Northwest Goulburn Community Association. Next slide, please. So there's a 2-year process to complete the public consultation and address comments under the ARA. That started in the spring of 2019. Because of COVID, we received an extension to that of 6 months. So the 2-year period ends, 2.5 years ends October 15th. We are required, we have already filed a final submission package to the ministry. We filed that a week or so ago, indicating we've met all of the requirements for public notification. And as your staff have indicated, the outstanding matter is this Planning Act application for the zoning amendment. The ministry cannot issue the pit license until the Planning Act decision is made. Next slide, please. So I won't repeat this. You've heard from your staff the purpose of the zoning to rezone from rural countryside to mineral extraction subzone 2. I will ask for the next slide though. This is an excerpt from one of the site plans. It shows the operations plan, but what's meaningful here, Fernbank Road is on the right-hand side of the screen. And as your staff have indicated, the license area, the rezoning area is 300 meters set back from the north side of Fernbank Road. Inside that license area will be a berm. The vegetation and the natural area intervening will remain in place. As one of the previous speakers indicated, the road, the entrance to the site, the pit entrance will be realigned. So you can see that's the thick black line. It would be realigned to line up with Munster Road. So this is the area 300 meters setback from Fernbank Road, which far exceeds the intended setback in the city's official plan. And I think final slide. Thank you. So the decision on the zoning bylaw amendment is required from the City of Ottawa before the ministry will make a decision. There is an outstanding objection with the community association. So I anticipate the aggregate application will land at the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the ministry will not make their decision without the city making a decision on the planning application. I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tracy. I see we have a question from Councillor Meehan and question from Councillor Moffat. And I didn't know who came first, but because I didn't see the screen, but go ahead, Councillor Meehan.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Zander, how many trucks a day are going to be going in and out of here?
I don't have that statistic in front of me. It's going to obviously depend on how busy the pit is, depending, on projects that would require the drawing of aggregate from this site at any given time. I unfortunately, Councillor, do not have the statistics from the traffic study in front of me, but the city does have that, and hopefully it's been passed on to you.
Can you say under 50, over 50?
Well, I think it's under 50, but I can open the traffic study and try to come back to that question. Unfortunately, I don't have that number in front of me. Sorry.
Well, I think this is germane to the entire argument in this area. I'm surprised you don't have that. Does staff have it?
Staff does have that number. I'm told about 450 daily or 46 two-way per hour.
Pardon me? Are you kidding me?
Sorry.
450 a day? Oh.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so I think the traffic study quantified the potential worst case traffic if the site was operating at its max. And the traffic study concluded that the roads here could support that traffic. So I think that's an absolute worst case number, but I can't imagine that would be occurring on a daily basis. There's just not that much demand from aggregate here, but those are the maximum numbers that the traffic engineers assessed. And as I said, and as your staff have indicated, they concluded and your city staff agreed that the road network here can support the anticipated truck traffic from this proposed pit.
So I need to understand the former municipality prevented this, restricted this type of operation. So you say there's not a lot of demand for aggregate. So why are you looking for this rezoning now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think I said there's not a lot of demand. I don't know how much extraction is going to occur here on a daily basis. The property owner asks through the license process to license kind of a maximum annual tonnage from the site. All of the pits and quarries in this area have a maximum annual tonnage, so that's what he has requested. I don't know on a daily basis how much is going to be extracted. It's going to depend on demand and where that material needs to be hauled to meet the needs of individual projects, my apologies. Why are we licensing this site? Well, as you know, aggregate is finite. This site has been identified by my clients as having sand and gravel resource on it that is valuable and worth licensing. And the provincial policy statement says very clearly that there is not a requirement to demonstrate a need. We are protecting aggregate and making it available to market wherever it is, because that's where it is in the ground. There is no requirement in the PPS for a pit applicant to demonstrate need. The 2020 PPS was very clear in this regard.
So if I understand correctly, you're going to, it will be above the water line. Now, how can you guarantee that it will stay above the water line? The homes in this area are dependent on their wells. And being on a well myself, that's a huge concern for folks.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So one of the requirements of the ministry in the licensing process and in the information we provided to the city is to do a hydrogeology study, do a number of test wells and assessments on the site to establish where the water table is on the site. And so the pit license plans cannot show the pit extraction going into the water table. In fact, it has to stay above the water table, and that would be monitored and assessed as a pit operates. So this is the same in every pit and quarry. It was a requirement to demonstrate through the hydrogeology study where the measured water table is on the site, and the operation of the site will have to stay above that. And that's heavily regulated by the ministry, who has the authority to implement the site plans for the site.
So I'm told that the area that would be required for a turning lane off Fernbank, that's a small area. Would the company foot the bill to put a turning lane in there? But if you've got that many trucks, you're going to be backing up traffic on Fernbank. Can you build that into the site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think there was any discussion of a turn lane so far. I don't think the traffic study concluded that that was warranted. Perhaps one of your staff can comment on that, but to my knowledge so far, that hasn't been discussed or required by the city. As I said, the current entrance, if you were to visit the site, the current entrance to this site does not line up with Munster Road, but the proposed entrance to the site for the pit would line up and basically make a four-way intersection. But there's been no discussion of turn lanes to my knowledge.
That's it for me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Tracy. We heard from staff presentation that your client has a commitment not to use Munster Road. You're coming out at a four-way stop on Munster Road. Munster Road, of course, along with Fernbank Road was kind of upgraded to a restricted load truck route just in the last 2 years. The truck route south of Fallowfield Road is a full truck route right through the village of Munster and right down to Franktown Road. It sees a lot of traffic right now because quarries that operate in the vicinity of your applicant's property are accessing the village of Richmond and construction going in Richmond. Of course, we know Richmond is going to be the fastest growing rural community in rural Ottawa. It has the capacity for 2,000 to 4,000 more units in the next 25 years. If your client gets a contract that would permit them to operate within the village of Richmond based on the need through construction, what prevents them from driving down Munster Road as committed to, apparently?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I guess you're right, Councillor Moffat. The applicant has made a commitment for the truck haul route to not follow the Munster Road. So I guess they would be required to go around other roads to get there. That was
required how?
Well, that is, in fairness, that is a challenge. I don't, it can be written into the site plans, and education and awareness through the pit operator with his staff and the trucks that use the site. Once you leave the site, aside from the pit operator educating his staff and his truckers, it's implemented through the site plan, I guess, that the ministry enforces.
Yeah, so Minto and Mantic made a commitment not to use Mantic Main Street or not to use Century Road, and yet I'm after them constantly. They're subcontractors to get off Mantic Main Street and off of Century Road. Commitments are nice and all, they sound good, but they actually have no legislative bearing on anything that we can actually hold them to account on it. So it's a nice idea, but if the road is actually permitted to have trucks on it, they're going to use it.
Mhm.
That's all on this one for me.
Any other question to the applicant representative? I see none. Thank you very much, Tracy, for your participation. And now we turn our question to city staff, and I believe Councillor Meehan have her hands up before, and then we go Councillor Gower. So Councillor Meehan, go ahead to staff now.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question is, I'm going to repeat myself. The regional municipality prevented this type of application or zoning application to go ahead. And I'm just wondering, what has changed? Is it just that the road has been upgraded, that there's a truck route in there now? This kind of application, if you've followed the council, it just distresses me that we changed the zoning, and I just don't understand. What has changed? Why is this permissible now? Why are you recommending it now where it wasn't recommended in the past?
If I may.
Okay, Anissa, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. While I wasn't present for the 2016 application, the full details of that, I can indicate, or I can tell you that the application before us for a pit above the water table with the setbacks proposed is consistent with our current official plan and the current provincial policy statement.
What about for the official plan that and I apologize, I should know this. We're working on the official plan right now. Is it, will that be consistent with if we approve a new official plan? Is this area going to fall into the same zoning?
I believe so.
Maybe this is premature. If we could argue that. Okay, that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to get staff's some staff context. Reading the councillor's comments in the report about the 2012 aggregate resource area review. Can staff give us some context as to why that review was conducted, what the objectives were, and I guess how that may apply to this application?
My understanding of the 2012 review that Councillor Moffat was referring to was that it was an evaluation of bedrock resources across the city and an identification of large areas that ought to be protected from encroaching sensitive uses for future resource extraction. It did not identify this site. However, our official plan is quite clear that there's no restriction against individual applications put forward by individuals for other for rezonings of other sites.
The councilor's comments say there are 60 years of supply, though, of aggregate resource areas, or
was that the complete question?
I think the council froze, Anissa, but
Right.
But I think maybe I think that's a question. We have enough supply for 60 years.
I cannot comment on the existing supply, but I can say that our official plan does not require us to make that evaluation of whether more is required. And as Tracy said, there is no requirement to demonstrate need for the product when considering a rezoning of the site.
Councillor Gower, are you still frozen, or we lost Councillor Gower?
We lost him.
Okay, before we go to Councillor Moffat, I believe I seen legal on legal with us. Ms. Inta, can I ask you a question about this, the legality of this? So what's on the front of us? Staff report recommendation. zoning of this pit so they can go to the province and get their license from the ministry. And can you tell us why is the requirement for the zoning approval from the city before the province make a decision? Is that unusual? Because in the past, we know we didn't recommend the, let's say, expansion of a landfill, but the province still went ahead and approved the EA without the city's acceptance. So can you explain us why this one, they need the zoning for the ministry to give the approval?
Yes, Chair, the approval of technical documents such as the EA is one matter. The issuance of the license for operation is dependent upon the facility meeting other requirements, including municipal requirements. Under the Municipal Act, I know we're dealing with a Planning Act application for zoning, but under the Municipal Act, Sections 124 deals with pits and quarries, extraction sites. A municipality can, have restrictions on a pit or a quarry or an extraction site through a bylaw. We typically here in the city of Ottawa do that through zoning, where we regulate everything from setback to potentially hours of operation. As well, under the Municipal Act, Section 129, I think, deals with noise, odor, and pollution. And of course, we have regulations on that as well. So they are subject to zoning within our municipality for this type of quarry or extraction site. And therefore, the ministry will not license them until they've ticked all the boxes with respect to other regulatory approvals that have to be provided. And that is separate and apart from the technical requirements that they have to show, such as, the EA or any other approvals of that type.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it's just a checkbox in the application the ministry required from the municipality. So my question to you is, our staff, based on policy, they recommend approval of this. But if we say no to this, to that check in the box, that means they go directly to the LPAT or they go directly to the ministry?
There is no guarantee as to what direction they may take, Chair. In a refusal, or if we are at the LPAT, there is no guarantee that the ministry will provide direction or comments. I have been at the former municipal board with respect to quarry operations in the past, where the city has requested submissions from the ministry in terms of the operation of a particular site, and they have been silent. So there is no guarantee that the ministry will come forward with comments or provide a direction at the appeal level. But they could, and they could also provide comments to the tribunal if they wish to grant a license, which may then, of course, potentially influence what a decision would be at the tribunal in terms of balancing the municipal regulatory powers with matters of provincial interest under the Aggregate Resources Act.
So in another word, the ministry can still grant them even without the city checking this box about the zone?
Chair, I would suggest that the ministry cannot grant the license without the municipal approval for zoning, because it would be in contravention of the municipal regulations. However, if they wish to, they can certainly participate in a tribunal matter and make the argument that this is a matter of provincial interest under the Aggregate Resources Act, which then puts it in conflict with municipal regulations.
Okay, I'm trying to establish, basically staff have no choice but to make recommendation of approval based on the policy, because we just heard from staff and the applicant, they don't have to prove they need that pit. They don't have to justify the need for the pit. But our policy is we have to check that box of the zoning change before it goes to the ministry. That's one that's on the front of us right now.
Mr. Chair, planning staff can probably address the planning analysis a little better than I can with this, but it is my understanding that an applicant does not have to prove that this is a requirement at any level. However, whether or not they need to justify this in this particular area at the ministry, I'm unaware of that. I don't know what goes into the licensing application at the ministry for this type of operation.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Inta, for your clarification. I see Councillor Gower, you're back on. Can you hear us? Yes? Would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. I apologize for the lost
No
connection.
problem. Why don't you go ahead, ask your question?
I guess I'm just looking for staff to confirm. I want to make sure I'm understanding the councilor's comments correctly and that they're conveyed correctly. We have to have 3 planning horizons of land that is zoned or available for aggregate resource use. A planning horizon is 20 years. So we have not only the required 60 years, but we have 100 years currently zoned for aggregate. So is the interpretation that we have absolutely plenty and way more than we even need to satisfy the province and the provincial policy statement on aggregates?
Chair, I'm going to ask for planning staff to answer that question.
Okay, Mr. Brown, I see you put your, or you want Anissa to answer that one? Anissa.
So same response I provided last time. The city does have that analysis of aggregate resources that have been designated to meet that planning horizon. Nevertheless, our official plan does not restrict individual applications for site-specific applications for resources, and there is no need to demonstrate that there is need for additional resources. And if Adam wants to add addition to that, that's fine.
You've summarized well, Anissa, that exactly that. There's I don't know the exact number of years of aggregate that has been designated in the official plan through the designations of the bedrock and sand and gravel areas. It's certainly a long-term horizon. There's no doubt about that. But as Anissa said, the language is clear in the OP that site-specific extraction zoning bylaw amendments can be applied for, and that's what this particular applicant has done and gone through the process as per the OP.
Okay, so if this gets appealed by the applicant, though, is the fact that we have so much land in excess of what we need under the PPS, does that help in defending committee's decision? Should we reject this application? How will the tribunal likely weigh that piece of information?
Chair, at this time, I would be hesitant to make statements on what a potential argument would be from the city on this. However, I will advise that should this committee decide to refuse the staff recommendation today, reasons must be provided to accompany the refusal of the staff recommendation. And so that is certainly something that that staff can assist this committee with in terms of technical details for planning approvals.
Okay. Is there any mitigation required from the applicant towards the Trans-Canada Trail? I know there's buffers and berms along Fernbank, but what about the Trans-Canada Trail? Anything done to mitigate the visual impacts on the north side?
Chair, it's my understanding that this site is exempt from site plan approval, but as to the details of what is planned for this facility, I'll ask planning staff to address that question.
Madam Enta is correct. The site is not under our site plan approval. We don't have site plan approval. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry would be the approval authority for those details. I believe standard setbacks of 30 meters are what are currently illustrated on the operations plan.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. I see Councillor Darouz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Most of the question my colleague asked, but I have a question to clarify maybe Mr. Brown, this is a site we're talking about. Usually, when we have a application situation like that, we only have to do lifting on a zoning property if it's already has zone. But this is here, we're talking totally different. This is a full blown rezoning on that property. Can you please clarify that for me?
Yes, that's correct. So as we were talking about earlier, there are areas designated in the official plan for future extraction. And quite often they're, for lack of a better term, pre-zoned with a mineral extraction zone and a holding provision where there are certain issues that must be reviewed by planning staff before the holding provision can be removed, and staff have delegated authority to do so. This is a different situation in that this area is designated general rural and was not designated in the official plan for future extraction. So they do need to go through a full zoning bylaw amendment process. So yes, there are sort of different streams that one can take in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And I know that, Mr. Chair, like I read the comment from my councilor colleague. I'll be supporting Councillor Moffat because we do have plenty of resources and we do have plenty of aggregate available in the market in the meantime. Unless we have shortage, then it will be a different story. But anyway, those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for staff for the report.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moffat.
Thanks. Just a brief question for staff, just on the transportation study. You mentioned the study was updated in 2019. I think it was around then or shortly after that Fernbank was changed. Fernbank and Munster were elevated to because if we look at our old maps, our old truck route maps, of course, Fernbank and Munster Road north of Llewellyn were not truck routes in any way, shape, or form. Jenkinson was a road that was a full truck route that just kind of dead ended at Fernbank because of the whole Highway 7 province stole our road kind of thing. And now it's been upgraded to a restricted load truck route. Were the traffic studies that were done altered to reflect that change? Because that's going to change your traffic patterns. Because previously you would have the obligation to only go to Jenkinson because you have to have your closest deviation from the truck route in order to go to your local site, which would be this site at 7731. Of course, the change in the truck route allows them to go, a different direction. Was the report updated to reflect that?
Mike, are you going to answer? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I thought maybe Mike wants to answer that, but Anissa, if you have the answer, go ahead.
I was going to say that we have Mike Chiampa on the line, who would be the more correct person to answer that question.
Mike, go ahead.
Oh, we can't hear you, Mike. Still can't hear you.
I can answer this one. So the March 2020 traffic letter addendum did account for the 2020 truck route. So the most current traffic study in support of this application does consider the new truck route.
So how did the study change between the one you submitted, the one that was submitted previously, to the one that we have today? How did it change with the change in designation of that road?
There has not been a recent traffic count conducted in 2020 due to the pandemic situation, but the traffic study is the most current, the March 2020.
But I mean the movement plan, let's say, for the impacts of the pit on the road network. How has that changed in the study, reflecting the change in designation of the road?
The change that was made was that the traffic study assumed 40% going to Dwyer Hill, towards Dwyer Hill along westbound Fernbank, and 60% going eastbound Fernbank towards Jenkinson. And they assume that no truck traffic will use Munster.
Yeah, I've already questioned that assumption. But the other part would be in that restricted time. How do they show it there? Do they show that their trucks will be solely using Jenkinson?
The restriction has to do with the load on the truck.
Yeah.
So they're allowed, they're still permitted to use it, but the load has to be reduced in that period.
Okay, thanks. That's all questions for staff. Obviously, I'll have some comments on the file in general, but that's my questions for staff.
Thank you, Councilor Moffat. Any other question to staff before we turn it to comments? See none. Go ahead, Councilor Moffat.
Thanks. So my comments, Councillor Gower was referencing some of my comments. I was heavily involved in the official plan review back in 2013 and the aggregate review that we did citywide with Robin Vandeland at that time, and we were doing a village review at the same. Adam and Robin were working closely together on those matters. We set out to identify lands for protection for aggregate review and sand and gravel resource. We mapped out 400 years of supply. We didn't need it, but we mapped out 400 years of supply. In that 400 years supply that we mapped out, we did not consider this property. We settled on the fact that we had 120 years of supply for aggregate resource for limestone extraction, and we had 60 years supply for sand and gravel. Originally, this site, the application was for a quarry license. It was for a limestone resource zoning. It was not for sand and gravel extraction. And it was certainly for more than just above the waterline. Of course, in this area, when Heritage Corners was built, and I don't just have an affinity toward Heritage Corners because the name of the street is Lucas Lane, which happens to be the name of my two oldest boys. It's got its fair share of quarries. There's 1,500 acres zoned, either mineral extraction or mineral resource within 3 kilometers of Lucas Lane. Whether it's south side, most of it is north. We had an application for a Taggart quarry in this area recently. The community was concerned about, but we did approve it. We approved it because the property was zoned a mineral reserve. The intent was that it would become a quarry. So it did. This site was not. This site was never identified for mineral extraction. We know that the RMOC made that decision. Of course, that's a political decision, and that's kind of what I'm asking for today as well. We know what the provincial policy says. Now, the provincial policy on protecting lands is interesting. It's somewhat vague, and that it just says we have to protect as much mineral aggregate resources as realistically possible. Well, in the 1990s, it was determined that realistically possible with that 60 years, that 3 planning horizons. I don't believe we need this. I don't believe we need this site in order to achieve what we need at the city. It's not our obligation to zone properties just because someone buys it and they want to use it for such. When a developer buys prime agricultural lands, it's not our obligation to give them the right to be able to develop on it. I would say the same is true here, and that it's not our obligation just because a quarry operator has purchased this site with the intention of a quarry. I realized what we're seeing here is for a sand and gravel pit, but the original application was for a quarry and not just 300 meters, actually with the whole site was the recommendation to the province and to the city was to zone the entire site for a quarry. I would suggest that getting the ME2 zone is a step toward a quarry. When you've exhausted the sand and gravel resource, you still own a site that has ample amount of limestone underneath, and you can still seek to get that quarry. It doesn't belong here. We have plenty in this area already. As shown through our very own aggregate resource study, we have plenty across the city, close access to market. We've already got it covered. So I'd ask my colleagues here to reject this application. I don't like the idea that our tacit approval of this zoning is what permits the province to also approve the license. I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moffat. Any other speaker? So, Ms. Inta, if committee voted no to the application, then it'll be legal who will submit a letter to the applicant. Is that the process, or do you need a motion from Councilor Moffat? I'm in your hand.
Mr. Chair, we need a motion to refuse the staff recommendation, and between now and council, reasons can be looked at with committee members to present that recommendation to council.
Okay, so Councillor Moffat, you move a motion to reject this application.
Yeah, so I would move that the report recommendation be amended to say that Agricultural Affairs Committee recommend council refuse an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 7731 Fernbank Road to permit aggregate extraction operation as detailed in document 2.
Okay.
And then I will work with staff and yourself between now and council.
That's so from my colleague, the ayes and nays on the report, on the motion, Councillor Moffat, sorry, not on the report, on the motion. Mr. Desjardins.
Councillor Meehan.
We're voting on Scott's motion to reject the application.
Yes.
Yay, I support that.
Councillor Moffat.
I think he's yes.
Yeah, if I could just use my mouse. Yes.
Councillor DeRuse.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Vice Chair Kitts.
Yes.
And Chair El Shantiri.
Yes.
So that's 6 yeas, no nays.
So the motion carried on the report as amended. Okay.
Carried.
As amended with the motion, obviously.
Obviously, yes, carried.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And to staff, this is thank you. This is nothing really directed towards staff. Staff did what the policies, and it's up to us, I think, to make that change. I find it is ironically the province need us to do this, but anyway, that's for another debate. But thank you, Anissa, Adam, and traffic staff for participating today in the meeting. Open mic session, we have no one, correct, Mark? No one signed up for open mic session?
Correct.
Okay. Notice of motion for consideration of supplemental, we have none. None to date. Inquiries? See none. Other business? Adjournment. So our next meeting Thursday, November 4th. And also we have the official plan joint meeting on October 14th. So bring your sleeping bag, plenty food, and that would be a long meeting. So with that adjournment, okay?
Carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.